Hey everyone, today I wanted to spend a couple minutes talking about software integrations and why they are so damn difficult to get right. First, what do I mean by a software integration? Well, what I mean is you have two different products with two unique value propositions that share a similar type of user, and they share some similar types of data. And the idea of an integration is that by somehow sharing actual data between those two products, you can solve a user problem and help your customers focus on what's important to them. This is a problem that's very near and dear to my heart because I've been doing it for most of my career. Now, what do I mean when I say they are difficult to get right? Well, setting up an integration is easy. You have all types of ways you can export data from most products. There's GraphQL APIs, REST APIs, grabbing an export link for a CSV, even SOAP APIs. And those would let you get data from point A to point B if you have a team of great engineers. What's so hard about that? Most of the time, we're not actually eliminating user frustration and time sinks. We actually compound it. We have users going through trying to figure out, okay, I was expecting this data to be propagated over, but I don't see it. Or this data never made it over. It ends up adding more confusion to the product experience rather than helping the user. Problem one in software integrations is domain language. You have your user, your customer, who has some problem that they're trying to solve, and whether they realize it or not, they come up with a specific language to talk about that problem and all of the different aspects involved. And this might be industry standard terms, might be assumptions based on their experience. If your user is actually a team of people or a company, then those assumptions can get compounded and you end up with a very diverse language around the problem that the user is trying to solve. Now, step over into product A. Product A is built by a group of very intelligent, hardworking people who collectively spend hundreds of hours of the week trying to solve problems for their users. And they also have to come up with their own domain language to talk about the user's problems, because most users have different language that they use to talk about things. So by working together, talking with their customers, product A can come up with their language, and then they can be relatively certain that internally, when they're talking about something, they're all on the same page about what it is they're trying to solve for their customers. Now, you've got the same thing for product B. A team of very intelligent, hardworking people spending many hours a week trying to solve their user problems, and they come up with a set of language to describe those problems. But there's really never any guarantee that the two languages, or really three when you count the user, there's no guarantee that those languages are going to be talking about the same thing. So if a user comes in and says, hey, I would love it if you guys integrated in this way, well, what they say might be referring to one thing for product A, something completely different for product B. And unless you take time to really dig into what is it the user's trying to solve, what's that pain point, you're going to miss, completely go over their head, and then the user's just going to be left frustrated. The second problem in integrations is that copying data is easy. Keeping it up to date is hard. So I mentioned earlier that most modern products have APIs that can be used for copying data over. And assuming you can get past your domain language barriers, then using an API to do a one-time copy of data is pretty easy. The user is going to want data copied over on some regular basis. They want the latest and greatest from product A to show up in product B. Well, there's a few ways you can do that. You can have regular recopies of the data, but that brings with it its own set of problems. How do you identify what's changed? How much data do you want to track? How often do you need to refresh? Are you setting the right user expectations around that refresh frequency? Now, if you want to do something more real time, you can use webhooks. Webhooks are short messages that are used for one system to tell another when something has changed. But then, what if one system is asleep while the webhook comes over? They're having a bug, they're having some system issue. Then you end up with a set of data in product B that is out of step with product A. And those problems can propagate downstream and potentially never even get fixed, which will lead the user to being very frustrated, saying, hey, these things aren't really talking to each other the way that I expect. And then, what if a bug gets, oh, wow. Finally, software bugs happen. It's a fact of life. But what if a bug in product A results in some bad data being sent to product B? How's that going to get remediated? Who's going to chase it down? Who's going to address the user confusion in terms of seeing, hey, I got some really messy stuff in here. Again, product A messing up my data in product B. And chasing down those changes can be a huge pain in the butt. The final problem in setting up integrations is the question of how much control do you give the user? And unfortunately, a lot of products end up going the route of giving the user almost total control. And that results in a very confusing setup, and you're essentially asking your user to become a systems integration expert. And remember, the whole point of us trying to integrate these two products is that we were trying to keep the user from having to take on additional burden. So we've already failed. The main problems in product integrations are domain language is the first big hurdle. People develop their own language to talk about the problems that they're solving. And when you're talking about product integrations, well, that's at least compounded by 3. The second challenge, keeping data up to date is hard, tracking issues with data is hard, and bringing that all together to meet your customer expectations is the real challenge. And finally, the right user experience around controlling the integration can make or break your user's perception of all the hard work that you put in. But it's not hopeless, because if teams on both sides of the aisle recognize these issues, work together, talk to their customers about what problems they're trying to solve, then you can create a really great software integration that solves the user's problems.